The rain came down in sheets that Friday evening, turning the Chicago streets into rivers of reflected neon. Claire Bennett sat at the corner of Murphy's bar, her third glass of wine barely touched, staring at nothing in particular. Her phone buzzed again with another message from her ex-boyfriend, but she couldn't bring herself to read it. 3 years together, and he had ended it with a text message while she was in the middle of presenting a campaign to clients. She was 26 years old, worked 60-hour weeks as a marketing assistant at Sterling Enterprises, and tonight felt like every sacrifice she had made was for absolutely nothing. Her black dress was still pristine from the client meeting earlier, but her mascara had started to run an hour ago when the reality of her breakup finally hit her. The breaking point. The bartender, an older woman with kind eyes, slid another glass of water toward her. Claire tried to smile but couldn't quite manage it. Around her, the bar filled with the usual Friday night crowd, people celebrating the end of the work week, laughing, living their lives without the weight she felt pressing down on her chest. She should have gone home. She knew that. But her apartment felt too empty, too quiet, too full of memories she wasn't ready to face. So she stayed, nursing her wine, trying to convince herself that tomorrow would feel better. That's when the two men approached her table. Both wore suits that had seen better days, ties loosened, breath heavy with alcohol. The taller one leaned against her booth, grinning in a way that made her skin crawl. "You look lonely," he said, his words slurring slightly. "We can fix that." Claire's stomach tightened. "I'm fine, thank you. I'd like to be alone." "Come on, don't be like that." The second man pulled out his phone, aiming it at her. "Smile for us. You're too pretty to look so sad." An unexpected savior panic rose in her throat as she realized other patrons were watching but not intervening. She stood quickly, maybe too quickly, because the room tilted. The wine had affected her more than she thought. She grabbed her purse, trying to push past them toward the door. "Where you going?" The man with the phone blocked her path. "She said she wants to be alone." The voice came from behind them, deep and controlled, carrying an authority that made both men freeze. Claire looked up, and her breath caught. Logan Sterling stood there in a charcoal gray suit, raindrops still glistening on his shoulders. She recognized him immediately. Everyone at Sterling Enterprises knew their CEO, though most had never spoken to him directly. He was 35, unmarried, and rarely seen outside of boardrooms and business magazines. "This doesn't concern you," the taller man said, but his confidence was already wavering. Logan's expression didn't change. He simply looked at them with the kind of calm that came from never having to raise his voice to be heard. "Actually, it does. Claire works for me, and I'm taking her home. Unless you'd like me to call security and have them review the footage of you harassing my employee." The men exchanged glances, then backed away, muttering under their breath. Logan waited until they left before turning his attention to Claire. His gray eyes held concern, not judgment. "Mr. Sterling?" Claire managed, her voice shaky. "I didn't know you were here. I had a meeting nearby. Are you all right?" She wanted to say yes to maintain some dignity, but the room was still spinning slightly. "I'm fine. I can get a cab. In this rain? Let me drive you home." It wasn't a command, but it wasn't really a question either. Before she could protest, he gently guided her toward the door. The cool air outside hit her face, making her more aware of how unsteady she felt. Logan's hand steadied her elbow as they walked toward a black car waiting at the curb. The flash that changed everything. What neither of them saw was the photographer across the street. Camera ready, capturing the moment Logan helped Claire into his car. The image showed his hand on her back, her head tilted slightly toward him, both of them caught in the glow of streetlights and rain. The drive to her apartment was quiet. Claire sat in the leather seat, embarrassment washing over her in waves. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "This is so unprofessional." "You had a difficult day," Logan said simply, his eyes on the road. "That doesn't make you unprofessional. It makes you human." She wanted to explain about her breakup, about feeling like her life was falling apart, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she just nodded, grateful for his kindness. When they arrived at her building, Logan waited until she was safely inside before driving away. Claire climbed the 3 flights to her apartment, collapsed on her couch, and finally let herself cry. The morning after Saturday morning arrived with cruel sunlight streaming through her curtains. Claire's phone was buzzing insistently on her nightstand. Still half asleep, she reached for it, expecting messages from friends. Instead, her screen was flooded with notifications. Text messages, missed calls, emails, social media tags. Her hands trembled as she opened the first link someone had sent. The headline made her blood run cold. Billionaire CEO Logan Sterling spotted with mystery woman after hours. Below it was the photo. Her and Logan caught in what looked like an intimate moment. The article speculated about their relationship, questioned the ethics of a CEO being involved with an employee, and invited readers to share their opinions. The comments section was already full. Some called her a gold digger. Others accused her of sleeping her way up the corporate ladder. A few defended her, but their voices were drowned out by judgment and speculation. Claire's chest tightened as she scrolled through post after post, each one dissecting her life, her choices, her character. People who had never met her were deciding who she was based on a single photograph taken out of context. Her phone rang. It was her mother, then her best friend, then someone from HR. She couldn't answer any of them. Instead, she sat frozen on her bed, watching her life unravel in real time across the internet, wondering how a simple act of kindness had turned into a scandal that threatened to destroy everything she had worked for. Across the city, in his penthouse office, Logan Sterling stared at the same photo on his computer screen, his jaw tight with frustration. He had faced scandals before, but never one that involved someone innocent. Someone who had done nothing wrong except accept help when she needed it. He picked up his phone and made a call to his PR team. This wasn't going to destroy Claire Bennett. He would make sure of that, even if it meant putting himself directly in the line of fire. Enterprises, watching employees stream through the glass doors, and wondered if she could actually do this. Her best friend Rachel had called her 17 times over the weekend, begging her not to go in. Her mother had suggested she take a leave of absence. Even her younger brother had texted, "Just quit. No job is worth this." But Claire had never been a quitter. She had worked too hard to get this position, survived too many late nights, and rejected pitches to let a misunderstood photograph chase her away. So she straightened her shoulders, gripped her coffee like a lifeline, and walked through those doors. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt endless. When the doors opened, the marketing department spread before her like a minefield. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Screens quickly minimized. Eyes followed her every step. Claire kept her head high, walking to her desk as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. She could feel it in the air, thick with judgment and curiosity. Her colleague Jessica, who usually chatted with her every morning, suddenly became very interested in her keyboard. Tom from design actually turned his chair away. Only her desk partner, an intern named Brian, gave her a sympathetic smile before quickly looking down at his work. The morning crawled by. Claire threw herself into reviewing campaign analytics, answering emails, anything to avoid the suffocating silence around her. At lunch, when she walked into the break room, 3 people left immediately. She ate her sandwich alone, staring at the wall, wondering how long she could endure this. The public defense that afternoon. The entire company received a notification about an all-hands meeting at 3 o'clock. Claire's stomach dropped. She knew what this was about. They were going to make an example of her, probably announce some new policy about professional conduct. The conference hall filled quickly, employees whispering among themselves. Claire found a seat in the back, trying to make herself invisible. The lights dimmed, and Logan Sterling stepped onto the stage. He looked exactly as he always did at these meetings, confident, composed, wearing a navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. But there was something different in his expression, a hardness around his eyes that Claire had never seen before. "I'm going to address the elephant in the room," Logan began, his voice carrying easily through the microphone. This weekend, a photograph circulated showing me helping an employee to her car after she experienced harassment at a public establishment. The room went completely silent. Claire felt hundreds of eyes trying to find her in the crowd. Since then, I've read countless articles, seen numerous social media posts, and received questions from board members and shareholders. So let me be absolutely clear. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the audience. Claire Bennett is an exemplary employee who has contributed significantly to our marketing campaigns. On Friday night, I witnessed her being harassed by strangers. I intervened, as any decent human being should. I then ensured she got home safely again, as any decent human being should. Claire's eyes burned with unexpected tears. If anyone in this company has a problem with that, Logan continued, his voice taking on an edge. If anyone believes that protecting a colleague from harm is inappropriate, then I question whether you belong at Sterling Enterprises. We built this company on values of respect, integrity, and looking out for one another. I will not apologize for upholding those values. He let that sink in before adding, furthermore, any employee found spreading rumors, making disparaging comments, or creating a hostile work environment for Claire or anyone else will face immediate disciplinary action. Are we clear? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, though Claire noticed some people looked uncomfortable, caught in their own judgment. When the meeting ended, Claire slipped out quickly, not wanting to face anyone's reactions. But as she waited for the elevator, a familiar voice called her name. Claire, could I see you in my office? Behind closed doors, Logan's office occupied the entire corner of the 23rd floor, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a stunning view of Chicago's skyline. Claire had only been here once before, during her initial interview 2 years ago. She stood awkwardly near the door until Logan gestured to the chair across from his desk. He loosened his tie slightly, and for the first time since she had known him, he looked tired. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," he said quietly. "The meeting, the weekend, all of it." "You didn't have to defend me like that," Claire replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've already done so much." "Yes, I did." Logan leaned back in his chair, studying her. 8 years ago, when I first took over this company from my father, the media crucified me. I was 27, deemed too young, too inexperienced. They published articles about every mistake I made, real or imagined. One outlet claimed I was embezzling funds. Another said I was having affairs with board members to maintain control. Claire's eyes widened. She had heard vague mentions of Logan's difficult early years as CEO, but never the details. None of it was true, he continued. But truth didn't matter. The narrative had been written, and I was expected to play the role they created for me. It took 3 years and several lawsuits to clear my name. By then, the damage was done. People still believe what they want to believe. "How did you survive it?" Claire asked. Logan was quiet for a moment, his gaze distant. "I learned that you can't control what people think. You can only control your actions and whether you compromise your integrity for their approval. I refused to become the villain they wanted me to be." Something in his words resonated deep within Claire. She had spent the entire weekend wondering if she should apologize, hide, or disappear. It never occurred to her that she could simply refuse to accept the narrative others were creating. The worst part, Logan added, turning his attention back to her, was feeling alone in it, like no one could understand what it felt like to have strangers dissect your life. Their eyes met, and Claire saw something vulnerable in his expression, a crack in the armor he usually wore. "I understand now," she said softly. Unexpected connection. Over the next few days, something shifted. Logan found reasons to stop by the marketing department, asking Claire's opinions on campaigns, inviting her to strategy meetings. It was all perfectly professional, but there was an undercurrent neither acknowledged. On Wednesday evening, Claire stayed late to finish a presentation. Most of the office had emptied out when Logan appeared at her desk. "Still here?" She jumped, not having heard him approach. "Just finishing this pitch for the Henderson account." He glanced at her screen, then pulled up a chair. "May I?" For the next hour, they worked together, Logan offering insights from his years in the business, while Claire brought fresh creative perspectives. Their collaboration felt natural, easy, like they had been doing this for years instead of days. "You have good instincts," Logan said when they finished. "Most people in marketing try to tell clients what they think they want to hear. You tell them what they need to hear." Claire smiled. "My first boss told me that truth sells better than flattery." Smart boss. She was. She also told me that the right people would recognize my worth, and the wrong people would never matter anyway. Claire paused, then added, "I'm trying to remember that lately." Logan's expression softened. "It's harder than it sounds, isn't it? Believing you're worth more than other people's opinions?" "Yes," Claire admitted, "especially when those opinions are everywhere you look." "They'll move on," Logan assured her. "There will be another scandal, another story. The attention span of the internet is remarkably short. And what happens to us when they move on?" The question hung in the air between them. Claire hadn't meant to say us, as if they were a unit, a team. But somehow, over these few days of shared understanding, that's what they had become. Logan stood, adjusting his suit jacket. "I suppose we go back to normal. Whatever that means now." But as Claire watched him walk away, she wondered if normal was even possible anymore. Something had changed between them, something that had nothing to do with scandals or photographs. It was in the way he looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, the way her heart raced when she heard his voice. She gathered her things and headed home, her mind replaying their conversation. The city lights blurred past the taxi window, and she thought about what her friend Rachel had said earlier. Sometimes the worst moments lead to the most unexpected connections. Claire had laughed it off then, but now, alone with her thoughts, she wondered if Rachel might be right. Because despite everything, despite the judgment and the whispers and the invasion of her privacy, she couldn't regret that rainy Friday night. It had brought Logan Sterling into her life in a way that felt real, raw, and terrifyingly significant. And as much as she knew she should maintain professional distance, as much as logic screamed that this could only end badly, her heart had started writing a different story. One where sometimes, just sometimes, the right person appears at exactly the wrong time, and you have to decide whether to run from the chaos or stand in it together. 2 weeks after the photograph scandal, just as Logan predicted, the media attention began to fade. New stories replaced the old ones, and the internet moved on to its next target. But inside Sterling Enterprises, the damage lingered like smoke after a fire. Claire arrived at her desk Thursday morning to find an envelope tucked under her keyboard. No name, no return address. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. Inside was a printout of the original photograph, but someone had drawn crude comments across it in red marker. The words were ugly, accusing, meant to hurt. At the bottom, in neat handwriting, "Everyone knows what you really are. You don't belong here." She crumpled it quickly, shoving it into her bag before anyone could see. Her throat felt tight, but she refused to cry. Not here. Not where they could see her break, but the notes kept coming. One taped to her car windshield. Another slipped into her mailbox at home. Each one more vicious than the last, attacking not just her character but her worth as a person. By Friday, Claire was exhausted from looking over her shoulder, from wondering who hated her enough to wage this anonymous campaign. She considered going to HR, but what would she say? She had no proof of who was behind it, and part of her feared they wouldn't believe her anyway. That evening, as she packed up her desk, she made a decision. She would submit her resignation on Monday. It was the only way to make this stop, to reclaim some peace in her life. When silence becomes impossible, Claire didn't know that Logan had found one of the notes. It had been left on the reception desk addressed to her, but his assistant had intercepted it, immediately bringing it to his attention. Logan sat in his office Saturday morning, staring at the hateful words, fury building in his chest. This had gone too far. He had tried to handle things diplomatically, to give people time to adjust and move on. But someone in his company was terrorizing Claire, and his patience had run out. He called his head of security. "I want to know who's been sending these notes. Check security footage, computer logs, everything. I want a name by Monday morning." Then he did something he never did. He called Claire directly on her personal cell phone. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice cautious. "Mr. Sterling?" "Logan," he corrected. "Are you home?" "Yes, why?" "I'm coming over. We need to talk." "That's really not necessary. I don't want to cause more trouble." "Claire." His voice softened. "Please, let me help." There was a long pause before she gave him her address. Truth in the Quiet Logan arrived 30 minutes later, still in jeans and a casual sweater, looking more human than she had ever seen him. Claire let him into her small apartment, suddenly aware of how modest it was compared to his world. He didn't seem to notice. Instead, he handed her a folder. "Security found 3 more notes that never made it to you. I wanted you to see them." Claire's hands shook as she read them. The hatred in the words made her feel sick. "I'm resigning Monday," she said quietly, setting the folder down. "This needs to stop, and that's the only way." "No." Logan's response was immediate and firm. "Absolutely not. I can't keep living like this. Always wondering who's watching, who's judging, who's going to attack me next." "Then let me fix it." He stepped closer, and Claire could see genuine distress in his eyes. "Security is reviewing footage. We'll find who's doing this. They'll be fired and prosecuted if necessary. And then what? Someone else will just take their place. People have already decided who I am. I haven't." The words came out raw, unguarded. "I know exactly who you are, Claire. You're brilliant, hardworking, and kind. You stayed late to help an intern with his presentation last week even though you had your own deadlines. You brought coffee to the janitor who works the night shift because you noticed he looked tired. You have integrity that most people in that building will never understand." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "How do you know all that?" "Because I've been paying attention." Logan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration mixed with something else. "I've been paying attention since long before that Friday night, if I'm being honest." The confession hung between them, charged with meaning. "Logan, we can't," Claire whispered. "You're my boss. The scandal would be 10 times worse." "I know." He looked pained. "Believe me, I know. I've been telling myself the same thing for weeks. But watching you suffer because of me, because I tried to help you, because someone in my company is tormenting you, I can't stay silent anymore." "So what are you saying?" He met her eyes directly. "I'm saying that I care about you. More than I should, more than is convenient or professional. And if you walk away because you genuinely want to, I'll respect that. But if you're leaving because you think it's what everyone else wants, then I'm asking you to stay. Stay and fight. Let me fight beside you." The corporate Gala Monday brought unexpected news. Security had identified the person behind the notes, Jessica, Claire's colleague who had been so cold after the scandal. She had been in love with Logan for years, apparently, and saw Claire as competition. She was immediately terminated and escorted from the building, but the damage was already done. Claire felt exposed, vulnerable, wondering how many others shared Jessica's hatred even if they hadn't acted on it. That evening was Sterling Enterprises' annual charity gala, a black tie event that Claire had been dreading for weeks. She considered skipping it, but Logan's words echoed in her mind. Stay and fight. So she put on her best dress, a deep emerald green that made her feel braver than she was, and walked into that ballroom with her head high. The room fell into whispers when she entered. Claire felt every eye on her, judging, speculating. Her instinct was to turn around and leave, but then she saw Logan across the room. He was surrounded by board members and investors, but his eyes found hers immediately. And then he did something that shocked everyone in attendance. He excused himself from his conversation, walked directly across that crowded ballroom, and extended his hand to Claire. "Dance with me," he said, not as a question but as a declaration. Claire's heart pounded. "Everyone's watching. Let them watch." His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath catch. "I'm done hiding. I'm done pretending that protecting my reputation matters more than being honest about what I feel. Logan, you'll regret this tomorrow. The only thing I'll regret is if you walk away tonight thinking you don't matter." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to something only she could hear. "You matter to me, Claire. You have from the moment I saw you in that bar, looking lost and brave all at once. I've tried to keep my distance, tried to do the professional thing, but I can't anymore. Life's too short to spend it afraid of what people think. Tears slipped down Claire's cheeks. Around them, the ballroom had gone silent, everyone watching this intimate moment unfold. "What about the scandal?" she whispered. "There will always be scandals. There will always be people ready to judge. But there's only one you. And I refused to lose you because I was too scared to be honest." Choosing courage, Claire looked around the room at all the faces watching them. She thought about the notes, the whispers, the judgment she had endured. She thought about her career, her reputation, all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Then she thought about Logan's hand steadying her in the rain, his voice defending her when everyone else stayed silent, his presence making her feel seen in a way she never had before. Sometimes the safe choice isn't the right choice. Sometimes courage means reaching for something beautiful, even when the world tells you to settle for less. Claire placed her hand in Logan's. The orchestra began to play as he led her onto the dance floor. Every eye in the room followed them, but for the first time since that photograph appeared online, Claire didn't care. She let Logan pull her close, his hand warm on her back, and together they danced. "They're going to talk about this for months," Claire murmured against his shoulder. "Probably years," Logan agreed, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Your board won't be happy. My board doesn't run my life. I might get fired." "Then I'll hire you at twice your salary." He pulled back slightly to look at her. "Claire, whatever happens tomorrow, whatever challenges we face, I want to face them with you. Not as your boss, not as some corporate figurehead, but as someone who sees you and chooses you above everything else." The music swelled around them, and in that moment, surrounded by judgment and curiosity and 100 watching eyes, something inside Claire settled. She had spent weeks running from this feeling, this connection, because she was afraid of what it might cost. But standing in Logan's arms, feeling his heartbeat against hers, she realized some things were worth the cost. Some connections were worth fighting for, even when the odds seemed impossible. "I choose you too," she whispered. Logan's smile was worth every scandal, every whispered comment, every difficult day ahead. He leaned down, his forehead touching hers, and in front of everyone who had judged them, questioned them, and tried to tear them apart, he kissed her softly. The room erupted in shocked murmurs, but neither of them heard it. They were too busy writing their own story, one where courage won over fear, where truth mattered more than reputation, and where sometimes, just sometimes, one rainy night could change everything. 3 months later, Claire sat at her new desk in the executive suite, reviewing proposals for a campaign she was now leading. Logan had recused himself from directly supervising her, and she reported to the VP of marketing instead. It wasn't perfect, but they were making it work. The scandal had eventually faded, replaced by genuine respect for how they had handled the situation. Not everyone approved, but enough people did, and the ones who didn't no longer mattered. Logan appeared in her doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand. "Break time?" She smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes. "Always." They walked to the window overlooking the city, the same view she had once admired from far away. Now she stood beside the man who had chosen to see her, protect her, and love her despite every obstacle. "Do you ever regret it?" Claire asked. "The scandal, the gossip, all of it?" Logan set down his coffee and took her hand. "I regret that you had to suffer through it. But regret you? Never. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Claire Bennett. Even if it started with the messiest, most complicated night imaginable." She laughed, leaning into him. "Who knew a drunk night at Murphy's bar would lead to this? I think they call it fate. I think they call it crazy. Maybe it's both." Outside, rain began to fall, gentle drops against the windows. Claire watched it stream down the glass, remembering another rainy night that had felt like the end of the world. Sometimes endings are really beginnings in disguise. Sometimes the worst moments crack you open just enough to let the light in. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to stand in the storm instead of running from it, you discover that the person standing beside you was worth every drop of rain. Logan pressed a kiss to her temple. Ready to face the rest of the day? Claire squeezed his hand. Ready for anything, as long as you're with me. And together, they turned from the window to face whatever came next. Proof that sometimes love doesn't avoid the scandal. Sometimes it walks right through it, hand in hand, and comes out stronger on the other side. The end.